We have this tweet from Justin Baragona, a statement from Biden on the Mayorkas impeachment. History will not look kindly on House Republicans for their blatant act of unconstitutional partisanship that has targeted an honorable public servant in order to play petty political games. That one's amazing. He continues, Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, a Cuban immigrant who came to the U.S. with his family as political refugees, has spent more than 2 decades serving America with integrity in a decorated career in law enforcement and public service. From his time in the DOJ as a U.S. attorney to his service as Deputy Secretary and now Secretary of Homeland Security, he has upheld the rule of law faithfully and has demonstrated a deep commitment to the values that make our nation great. This impeachment already failed once on a bipartisan vote. Instead of staging political stunts like this, Republicans with genuine concerns about the border should want Congress to deliver more border resources and stronger border security. Sadly, the same Republicans pushing this baseless impeachment are rejecting bipartisan plans Mayorkas and others in my administration have worked hard on to strengthen border security at this very moment, reversing from years of their own demands to pass stronger border bills. Giving up on real solutions right when they are needed most in order to play politics is not what the American people expect from their leaders. Congress needs to act to give me, Mayorkas, and my administration the tools and resources needed to address the situation at the border. The House also needs to pass Senate's National Security Supplemental right away. We will continue pursuing real solutions to the challenges Americans face, and House Republicans have to decide whether to join us to solve the problem or keep playing politics with the border. Let me just simplify all of this politically for you guys to understand what's happening. They want to open the border to thousands of illegal immigrants every day at a time when even Democrat strongholds have communities in uproar over the illegal immigration crisis. They want to send $60 billion to Ukraine. They want to send, I think it's what, 14.7 billion to Israel, as well as a portion of that to Taiwan. 20 billion of the dollars in the original bill would not go to securing the border. It would go to facilitating the invasion.
Well, that's what it is. It's more judges, it's more border agents, and it's all designed to get people in faster.
The bill gives Customs and Border Protection, in certain circumstances, the ability to issue work permits and adjudicate asylum claims without a court.
That's insane. And of course, that's the thing about the asylum seekers, right? Asylum seekers get work permits faster. They get access to basically federal and state aid faster.
And as Joe Rogan pointed out just about a week ago, there are certain jurisdictions that are trying to give illegal immigrants with work permits the right to vote in municipal elections. Joe Biden.
That was struck down in New York last year, but they could do it again.
But it's currently in the courts. It's under appeal. Joe Biden is doing exactly what everyone predicted. The moment this security bill would be introduced, Republicans would notice that it was the opposite of a security bill. And when they refused to play along, the Democrats would come out and say, aha, they oppose their own security bill.
When in reality, that bill was playing politics with the border, trying to call it a border bill, but giving 70% of the money goes to Ukraine and Israel. It's not a border bill. It's an Israel-Ukraine war bill that they called a border bill. That's playing politics with the thing. He said, don't play politics with the border. They just did it.
It's a Ukraine-Israel bill.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for topping that off.
That's like the, what was it called? The Inflation Reduction Act. And I was just reading today in Variety, it turns out that the Inflation Reduction Act made it possible for Travis Kelce to produce his first Hollywood film with federal credits from the Inflation Reduction Act.
Well, good for him.
Yay. It raised taxes on pretty much everybody, but, you know, Travis Kelce gets to produce a film.
The reason this bill was even structured in the way it was in the first place, meaning the bill that was abandoned last week, that included the immigration component, was because in September or October of last year, Republicans in the House kept saying, and some in the Senate kept saying, that although we might support in principle sending additional funds to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, we're prioritizing the border and immigration policy above all else. And so that is a required element of any bill that we would vote for. So it was Biden was proposing that as an accommodation to Republican complaints.
No.
And then the Senate Republicans designated James Lankford, who is one of the more conservative members of the caucus, or was seen as one before last week, who came up with a bill that if you compare it to previous attempts to pass comprehensive immigration reform, and I'm kind of neutral on that anyway, like I don't care one way or the other that much, but like in 2013 and the 2007, when there were these bipartisan attempts to do immigration reform, they included a lot more liberal or democratic priorities, including quote unquote pathways to citizenship. This included none of that. It was strictly border enforcement. So Biden ironically was willing.
No way.
Biden was willing.
Wrong.
Biden was willing to
definitely not accurate.
Biden was willing to totally spit in the face of the more hardline progressive immigration activists within the coalition and just go along with almost entirely Republican priorities, and Republicans chose to nuke the bill.
Did you read the bill?
Yeah, I did.
How could you possibly call it anything other than progressive? 8,500 non-citizens allowed in per day. CBP getting, in certain circumstances, the right to adjudicate asylum claims outside of the courts. The granting of work permits. The problem right now that Democrat voters in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and other major Democrat cities are complaining about is a massive influx of non-citizens sleeping in our airports, in our schools. So when they say it's a security bill that facilitates thousands, a million plus per year, that's not what Republicans are complaining about. That is Democrat gift giving. That is the only outcome of that proposal was that it would be set that the bill is dead on arrival. And then Democrats get to come out and say the security bill was rejected by Republicans.
Well, what the lead Senate negotiator, James Lankford, who I've actually spoken to in the past about Ukraine policy and other stuff, seems like a relatively normal conservative. I'm not saying, I doubt he would be doing the bidding of the Democrats just in some, mischievous or nefarious way. Seemed like he was pretty sincere in what he was trying to negotiate, although I stand open to be corrected on that. And he was saying that what it would have changed, and again, I don't really frankly care that much way or another about immigration policy. It's something I'm kind of agnostic on, for better or worse. But he was saying that the status quo now is that as many as like 6 or 7 or 8,000 per day migrants approach the border. And this would be creating a new authority where if it reaches that number on any given day or over the span of a week, then asylum claims aren't even being processed anymore at the border. So he said that within the past 6 months, there would have been only 3 or 4 days where the inflow would have been low enough that they would even be processing asylum claims in the first place. They were saying that this was going to create authority that Trump had sought, that Congress hadn't even enacted, that would have given him the ability to actually shut down the processing of asylum claims, which is otherwise mandated by law.
And redirect them to ports of entry for an additional 3,500, which is not what any person who's been complaining about the border had asked for. And all it was doing was creating a legal path to facilitate the illegal activities they were doing. So when we take a look at what Texas is doing with the National Guard and why Texas is doing it, it's because there is an invasion. And those are the words of, I believe it was Al Sharpton, an invasion on our border. And you've got New York, as I mentioned, all these major Democrat cities saying we are being invaded. If this bill were to pass, it would turn the illegal actions for which Mayorkas has now been impeached into legal actions, overwhelmingly. In fact, a large portion of the people coming through give false ages. We know this is a problem. Large portion, I don't know the exact number. I'm not saying it's 90%. It could be 3% or 4%. A large portion meaning there are thousands of individuals who are between the ages of 20 and 30 who claim they're 17. The bill explicitly stated that if an unaccompanied minor came, it would not even count towards that allotment they would allow in. How about this? If Texas thinks the problem is so egregious, they have lined their border with shipping containers covered in concertina wire and have sent in the National Guard to bar CBP access. Whatever bill they tried proposing, which would actually strip authority from Texas, should be DOA. And that means Lankford and anybody else absolutely sabotaged any effort at border security. And it was predicted by basically every pundit that said when they actually propose the border bill, and we talked about it on the show, here's what's going to happen. It's going to be garbage, as it always is. I'll put it this way. There's a great meme. And it's from a progressive. And they're like introducing the Free Ice Cream for Everyone Act. And it's like, oh, wow, I'll vote for that. Approved. Now, where's my free ice cream? And they respond, what do you mean? This bans owning dogs. This is what they do every single time with every single bill. They call it the border security bill, when in fact it would allow 8,500 per day. Oh, I'm sorry. After 5,000 non-citizens breach the border and Texas and other border states are unable to stop it, they redirect 3,500 to a port of entry for the same thing. And to alleviate the courts, because there's too many, they would give CBP certain jurisdiction to issue work permits. Then you've got certain jurisdictions across the country, including Maryland. New York tried doing it. They got jammed up in the courts. And California, Sacramento's doing it, in San Francisco, granting non-citizens the right to vote in municipal elections and making various excuses why they're allowing them to do this. We have to say outright, maybe we should just stop allowing thousands of non-citizens to pour in through our border every day. But I'll give you this. I'm glad all of it's happening, because now I can say very plainly to Gen Z, if you're wondering why it is you can't afford an apartment, why it is that eggs are costing you $10, why you have to live in a shoebox with no bathroom with two other people, just take a look at the non-citizens who have been given luxury hotel rooms in New York City and debit cards with $3,000 on it.
Well,
and maybe
and
if we
they
stop spending that money, you might have a better future.
And now they have a curfew in place too. Adams had to put a curfew on the migrants in those hotels. So from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., they're not allowed to leave or come in. So that's a thing. And also one of the architects of the bill, Chris Murphy from Connecticut, he said that under this bill, the border never closes. And he said
We
that
meant that in terms of
pride.
commerce, like economic.
Yeah, but he also
transactions
meant
over
that
the
in terms
borders.
of migrants getting shipped from one port of entry to another. Like they would close one and open something else.
I think he more meant that in terms of
People
goods being
still get in.
transported over the border, but I don't know for sure. Maybe he meant it differently. I don't know. John Thune, who's the second ranking Republican in the Senate, said that this is a list, this bill contained a long list of long sought Republican priorities in terms of border enforcement, and that they would never be able to get Democrats to budge on half of these in a Republican administration. He was saying that there was much more progress made under a Democratic administration, because it's like a Nixon going to China thing, right? Only Biden or only a Democrat can actually give some concessions to immigration restrictionists in a way that will lead to sort of muted opposition among Democrats. Because if Trump was in power, then Democrats would be screaming fascism, and this is going to lead straight to concentration camps and whatnot. But with Biden, their opposition is a bit more muted and tempered. And so the political logic seemed to me to make sense that Thune was laying out, in that this is the best Republican restrictionists could hope for in terms of a compromise in the Congress. Now, if people still don't like it, I get it. I don't particularly support it either.
What's the number? Like 1.7 million non-citizens per year? It's record breaking.
That's the
How is that a
It's more than
compromise?
that.
It's record breaking
like
now. They were going to reduce the
2.3
inflow.
this year.
Calling it
But how about you reduce the inflow by just putting razor wire on the border
Just
and
say
using
no.
CBP saying, get the out.
Well, I mean, they have, as Langford explained, I actually didn't quite realize this until maybe it was last week. Even the places on the border, I think most of Texas, where there is wall or where there is fortified border barrier, the barrier itself is like a quarter to a half mile inside United States territory. So once a, quote, migrant even approaches the wall, they're on United States territory. And then according to existing law, their asylum claim has to be processed. So what Langford and others who were promoting this bill were saying was that they're going to increase the threshold for a valid asylum claim, so they'll be able to turn away more people at that exact point than they're able to now. So they're saying the status quo is 6,000 or 8,000 encounters a day, and somebody coming in, X amount coming in to be processed. This will give us the authority to turn away more.
Right.
If that's true, I don't know.
get that.
But that
And
was the
so-
argument.
And so the issue is, this is exactly what we predicted would happen, because it gives the excuse to Democrats to claim we tried to secure the border. But there is not a single reasonable person conservatives know what's happening. They're paying attention and they're furious. But now you're getting Democrats in major cities lighting up, and not a single one of them is saying, I wish there was slightly less people storming our borders. No, they're saying, stop all of it. All of it should stop.
But it's never been stopped. Trump never stopped all of it. I mean, that's
Yeah,
why
but
they're
it was
giving
less
additional
than
authority.
half a million people
that's
a year
not
in
what I'm talking
2020.
about.
No, but
It was
Trump-
less than
But
half
hold
a
on.
million.
That's an aside. That's moving the goalpost. I'm saying people are asking the government to propose a bill that provides security to stop the influx. Not whether Trump did or didn't, or whether he could have done a better job. The issue right now is a record-breaking influx causing damage to our cities that Joe Biden himself, 20 years ago called, what did he say? It was turning the cities into ish holes or whatever?
Yeah.
No, the point is they were seeking, the Senate was attempting to give the president additional authorities to stem that influx, including authorities that Trump sought and was not able to receive, because it would have given a greater ability to stem the flow.
So right now it is illegal what they're doing. The bill would have created a legal path for the invasion. Right now, when a single person crosses the border, it's a crime. And CBP opening the barriers and bringing them in is a criminal act because they know coyotes and cartel members are the ones facilitating this. They should outright say no. U.S. policy as it pertains to kidnappings in overseas is not to negotiate with terrorist organizations. If someone gets kidnapped in the Middle East, and I don't know if this is true under Biden, but this was true under Trump, Obama, and as you know, basically in my professional career, you get kidnapped, the United States will not negotiate with terrorists. This meant that typically Americans would be ignored. German citizens and Spanish citizens were prized possessions for kidnappers in the Middle East because their governments pay up instantly and negotiate with any terror group who kidnaps their citizens. The United States would have a helicopter flying over your compound where a bunch of guys in all black with rifles would come out, kill everybody in the compound, and rescue the Americans. The American policy understood that if you negotiate with criminal factions and terrorists, you incentivize their behavior. So the best course of action is to tell them all, you touch an American citizen, you die. Now you have CBP and the Biden administration telling the cartels, you bring in trafficked humans, we take care of it for you. That I think that's a criminal action. I think we can say, okay, fine, impeach Joe Biden, whatever you want to say. But the idea, I see a video of CBP lifting up razor wire to bring these people in as coyotes and cartel members with rifles are shuttling them into the country. Mm-hmm. I'm like, we have a humanitarian crisis. We have atrocities being committed. The amount of young girls being raped by these gangs and cartels, and CBP makes it all possible with smiles on their faces to help make it happen. And now
and the NGOs that get funded by the federal government as well.
And then the Biden administration says, let's codify this and make it all legal. And I say, no, let's put a bunch of shipping containers on the border. Let's float things in the river and tell the cartels, when you bring a person, if a human being is standing alongside a coyote and a human trafficker, we consider them to be a part of your gang. You want to pay them $3,000 to traffic you through South America and Central America, through Mexico and to our border? You are working with enemies of the United States. Instead, it's compromise, roll over.
And Biden has the ability to close the border. I mean, he could just do it. He had the ability to open it. Well, the same authority he used to issue all the executive orders to blast it right open in his first days in office.
But that's what I'm saying. Even Trump did not have the authority to close the border.
Then why was it less than 500,000 people in 2020?
Because COVID reduced migration flows across the world. I mean, there was a record year.
Even if you go back,
2019 was a record year when Trump was in office, and I think he probably would have closed the border if he had the authority available to him. I don't know if it was an all-time record, but it was way over the maybe preceding 10 years or so when in 2019. So, I mean, it was 1.1. Right, which is a lot of people.
Well, it's not 2.3.
No, I'm not saying it. Yeah, it's less than the current inflow, but it was still a lot. The point being, there was no authority to just, quote, close the border. That's what they were trying to give to the president with this bill.
That's not
I'm
what
not
they
even
were
in favor of
trying
the
to give
bill. I actually think this gets to why House Republicans really ought not to be commended for doing this theatrical impeachment of Mayorkas, because we've agreed, I think, that it's purely symbolic. It will have no substantive impact on the policy grievances that you're laying out, rightly or wrongly. Right. It's a political stunt. It's a political ploy. It's a political ploy. It does not address the underlying substance. And also, by the way, it's accelerating the passage of this national security supplemental bill with the immigration part severed off, that is Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, which already passed 70-29 in the Senate and has majority support in the House. So now the House Republicans can say, oh yeah, maybe we use like a legislative maneuver to get this mammoth, $89 billion or however many billions it is, national security bill passed. But we also, mollified some of your concerns, base, by doing this meaningless impeachment of a cabinet official.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.